going to happen. Now, I think you gave a definition of budget on the webinar that I thought was just a beautiful definition. Can you share that?
Yes. A budget is a plan and a goal for your money. That's my assessment.
No, that's good. Well, let me refocus for a minute here. Everything you're talking about is completely, fundamentally sound, but it's coming from a person that has the heart to want to reach people. That's one thing that I've learned about you in our communications is that you have such a hard desire, a deep desire, I'll call it, not hard, but such a deep rooted desire that you want to be there for other people. And I always like to bring in some scripture on the show, just that goes along with the theme. James chapter 2, verses 14 through 17. Suppose a brother or a sister is without clothes and daily food. If one of you says to them, go in peace, keep warm, and be well fed, but does not do anything about their physical needs, what good is it? In the same way, faith by itself, if it's not accomplished by action, is dead. So that's my compliment to you, is that you're not just having a good heart that you wish people would be able to do better. You're taking action to try to move your life into a place where you're in a position where you can help people through your mentoring, your counseling, your consulting, all those things. But to go back to more of where you're coming from, I've caught on to what you're saying because I believe it's exactly the same as what I try to teach. And that is, you can send people to a budget class all day long, give them the forms, put them through the program, tell them that what you got to do is you got to write down everything that you're, identify all of, zero-based sum budget is a term that you use where living within your means. So you've got to know everything that happens with your money. And I have a process that I put people through to teach them how to figure out where all their money's going. Write it down. After they see it, what do you learn? They usually learn, I didn't know what the heck I was doing with my money, and I've been wasting an awful lot of money. That's kind of the goal where I want to get them to see. But then what do they do about it? They have to change their desire to not be like that anymore. They've got to start disciplining themselves. But you teach that in your own way, but and I'd like you to speak to this. I'm trying to kind of lead you into something because I like that. I think your communication is outstanding because you're a real person and you've gone through some obstacles and struggles yourself. And you were a single mom and you got to the point where you want it better for your child and you started saving. And Lindsay told me that your testimony about how in a 4-year period, you basically improved your situation by close to $80,000 while making minimum wage. That's where the title basically comes from, wealth at any wage. People are always using excuses that, well, I don't make enough money to start saving. I don't make enough money to do this or that. But what you're focused on is it doesn't matter what you make. It's the way you think. And so what I'd like for you to do is pick up in a second when I throw this back at you. I think you and I agree on one thing. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. But the point is, people need to change the way they view things, the way they think. And they got to be motivated. They got to have a purpose. They got to have a reason for doing that. And you help people realize the way they are and get to their root thinking before you try to show them the financial tools and the strategies that they can employ to succeed. So would you speak to that, please?
Absolutely. So there's a motivational speaker that I follow. Her name is Danielle Lepore, and her main work is called the Desire Map, and it's all about getting to what she calls core desired feelings, and that is, it's whatever it is. It's kind of like breaking down the way you want to feel into a few like specific words that, can become like your mantra, your affirmations, however you want to say that, but that you are then, everything you do is based around trying to find that feeling, so it's joy, stability, flexibility, whatever that is. And so when I'm working with people, the first two questions I ask them are, how do you feel about money? And how do you want to feel about money? And the answers to those two questions right there pretty much tell me everything I need to know about, what this person is going through and why they want to, make a better situation. And so, yes, when I say wealthy at any wage, I mean it. I mean that you don't have to wait wherever. It doesn't matter what your hard numbers are, because all of those are movable. Every single one is movable. So it's just about finding which ones can be moved easiest and fastest to get you in a better place, that you start seeing the wins, that you start seeing it can be done. And so when I talk to people about, what is it, another question I ask is, what's your biggest fear right now? Like, which item, like, why are you calling me? Like, what is your biggest concern? Just name one. Just name one concern. And let's work from there. Because that's another thing that I really, really believe in, is just tackling, one item at a time. Because again, that gets the mindset practice going. So just dealing with one concern at a time, instead of trying to plow through all of them, you actually get the practice of being able to think better about it. You have to start with where you are, and there's nothing about your situation that can't get better. And I want to put a pin in that a little bit and kind of go back to what you were talking about with the 85% and the breaking that cycle. Is that one of the things that I see, and you even spoke to a little bit, like, I can't budget because I don't have a lot of money, or I can't budget because I don't have, a specific project, or whatever, the excuses. People who have systemic obstacles, so, they've been incarcerated, or they live in really low income areas. They come from families where education or housing issues, things like that. Like, maybe they're homeless. Maybe there's always been 12 people in the home, and nobody can kind of get ahead because you're always working back into that nuclear family. A lot of times there's systemic obstacles that you have to get around, and those can feel hard. But again, it's about getting creative and thinking outside the box and figuring out the things you can do instead of focusing on what you can't do. And Henry Ford, this is always a great quote. Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And so that's another one that I kind of always go back to, because it's just about setting yourself up to think positively, to move forward.
Yeah, that's pretty right on target. That's truly optimistic, but can be done. I mean, it's a lofty goal, but it can be done. So when I watched your video, Facebook Live, I wrote down so many things that you said that I absolutely loved. You gave a little story when you talked about being specific. Wow. Hey, let me just read these notes, because this, so you talked about specific, you categorize your lifestyle, you get line items, you talk about things, you live within your budget and so forth. And then you look at what are you spending and how much should you be spending. You did all those. Then you broke things down into percentages, and we won't stop on that though. But then you said, you got to get it down on paper and see what's out of control and start paying attention. Mm-hmm. And you talked about the small successes, but you talked about being responsible, and you made a phrase: live the best life you can, take control of your life. These are why you need to do what you're going to show them how to do. But this is what I'm getting to. And the part about being specific, you talked about identify where your money goes, categorize your lifestyle, and assign amounts to it. And then you gave the example about the candy. And the story ended up that you'll say it better than me because it's your story. But what I liked was you used the phrase, it's time to pull back, but you can come back to it later. Mm-hmm. If you'll share what you said in your Facebook Live presentation, because that's so real. People, when they're told you're going to have to budget, you can't spend this anymore, they go, well, I don't want to listen to you anymore because I don't want to stop that. Talk about that, please, because that was so powerful.
Absolutely. So the example I gave was when you're going through your budget, and again, be specific. So you have to get down in there, get into the trenches, really look at where your money is going, look how much you're spending across, all the different categories, but give yourself specific line items in your budget, specific name it and claim it. So if there is something that you are consistently spending money on, some specific thing, so I also gave the example of like my daughter and my cat. Like I give specific amounts to caring for them that is separate from all my other spending, because those are important to me and I want to make sure that they are taken care of. But the specific example you're referring to, Steve, was this idea that you're looking back through your budget for the last 3 or so months and you're noticing that, every Friday you go down to the candy shop and you buy a bag of candy or you buy something. And when you're going through your budget and you're thinking, what can I cut back on? What can I cut back on? And you're seeing like, oh, wow, I didn't notice that I spent, $30, $40 on candy this month. Well, that tells you two things. Number one, you're probably spending too much money in a easily considered luxury, spending category, but also that candy is important to you. It's like your treat for the week. So what you can do is, yes, you pull back on it, but you give yourself that hard $20 a month for candy. So you don't get rid of it completely, but you assign a number to it. You give it it's important. You give it a job. You give that money the job to get you your weekly treat. And so, yes, maybe you've noticed that you've been spending $40 a month, and now you're saying, okay, I'm only going to spend $20, and you have to stick to that. But you're not completely giving up that important thing. You're that important item. And it can really be anything. And that's one of the reasons to, again, go back and be honest and be specific, is that you will start to see those things in your budget that are important to you. And then you can find the things that aren't. So when you're talking about getting rid of things or not spending money on something, you can make those decisions in a way that still feels good to you. And that's, I think, just what you said, people need that motivator. And that's a big thing that I see over and over and over again in the personal finance world, is telling people, you got to cut back, you got to cut back, you got to cut back. It's like, yes, you do need to cut back right now for this time so you can meet your goals, but you don't have to eliminate the important things. You can still, partake in the important things. You just have to give them reasonable amounts.
That's really good. The thing about candy, my final word on that is, if there's something that you really, really like, you don't have to go cold turkey. Yeah. Just cut back. And some habits that we have, they take a long time to change, to break. You have to replace them with another more positive habit. But don't be disappointed if you don't succeed right away. Be patient with yourself. I use this term, don't kick yourself too hard. Like if you realize you're spending all that money on candy, it's kind of like, a habit you've got? Well, start being conscious